Get ready for a deep dive, folks. We're heading into Daevabad, and let me tell you, this is not your average fantasy city.
Oh, not at all.
This place is ruled by Djinn, magic is everywhere, and you've got 6 different Djinn tribes all trying to grab power.
Yeah.
You wanted to know about Nahri, right? Mm-hmm. Well, her story, let me tell you, is anything but ordinary. We're going to be using S.A. Chakraborty's Daevabad Trilogy and a novella called The River of Silver to guide us on this one.
What I think is really cool about Daevabad is it's so much more than just like your typical fantasy city, you know? We're talking about centuries of history, tons of tension between these different tribes, and a magic system that's tied to the actual elements. Oh, and of course there's other magical creatures too, like Ifrit and Merid and Peri. They all kind of add to the excitement of the whole place.
Yeah, it's a real melting pot of magical mayhem. Okay, so picture this. You're Nahri, you're a young woman living in human Cairo, and you're a con artist. You're using your street smarts to survive. No family, no idea about where you really come from. It's just you against the world, right?
Right.
Then, bam, you run into a Djinn, and everything changes. Like, not only is your world flipped upside down, but this encounter, it like jumpstarts these hidden healing powers you didn't even know you had. And then just like that, you're whisked off to this hidden city of Daevabad. Talk about culture shock.
Huge culture shock. And that's where we get to like the really interesting part. In Daevabad, you see how the history of this world plays out in the everyday lives of the Djinn. We've got these 6 tribes, each with their own, customs, traditions, and even prejudices. It's kind of like if you had families that have been feuding for generations, but with magic powers.
Okay, so definitely not your average family reunion then.
No.
So we've got the Gaziri. They can actually pass as human. They're the ones calling the shots right now. But then you have the Daevabad tribe who they face a lot of discrimination, a lot of resentment, creates a super tense atmosphere in the city. It's like it's a powder keg just waiting to go off.
It really is. And right into this crazy mix comes Nahri. And what she finds out in Daevabad changes everything. Not just for her, but for the whole city. Remember those 6 tribes we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out Nahri is a Nahri. She's a descendant of a super powerful line of healers that everyone thought was gone, extinct. They used to rule Daevabad. And their magic, it's connected to water and the power of intention, which is pretty unique.
So she goes from a street hustler to like a lost princess. That's a serious twist. How does she even handle that?
Well, luckily, she doesn't have to figure it all out by herself. Yeah. She's got Dara. He's this Daeva warrior bound to serve the Nahids. He becomes her protector, her guide in this totally new world. But Dara, he's got his own stuff going on. He's super loyal to Nahri, but he's haunted by, a pretty violent past, a past that's tied to the rebellion, the war against the Gaziri.
So he's carrying some baggage then.
Yeah, definitely. And his feelings for Nahri, they're strong, but they're also mixed up with all this trauma from his past. Makes you wonder, can he break free from all the violence that's shaped his life? And what does all this mean for Nahri, who's just starting to understand her own power, her own history?
Definitely a lot to process. But wait, there's more. We've also got Ali, a Khatani prince.
Yeah.
He befriends Nahri, which is kind of a big deal because his tribe, they've got these ingrained prejudices against other Djinns, especially the Daevas.
Totally. Ali is so interesting because he's not afraid to challenge his tribes. He sees Nahri for who she is and he supports her, even if it puts him at odds with his own family. And on top of that, Ali goes through his own magical awakening.
Oh, wow.
His powers are tied to the Merid, giving him control over water, which adds another layer to the whole power struggle in Daevabad.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've got Nahri, this lost Nahid princess with healing powers, Dara, the Daeva warrior with a complicated past, and Ali, the Khatani prince who can control water. And they're all stuck in the middle of this brewing conflict between the Djinn tribes. What's the political scene like in Daevabad?
Oh, it's tense. King Ghassan, the Gaziri ruler, he's a master manipulator, totally set on keeping his power. He sees Nahri's return as a threat, and he'll do whatever it takes to control her and keep things as they are. And remember Manisha, powerful Daeva who's leading the rebellion.
Yeah.
She was Dara's master, and she wants revenge, payback for what happened to her people. She's a force to be reckoned.
Okay, so we've got political intrigue, ancient grudges, a rebellion brewing, and magic flying all over the place. What does this all mean for Nahri? How does she deal with this new world and all the expectations that come with who she is?
That's what makes her journey so fascinating, right? Imagine going from tricking people on the streets to potentially leading a magical kingdom. It's a lot to take in. She has to figure out who to trust, what choices to make, all while trying to understand her own powers and the legacy.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
But we're just getting started. Next time, we'll go deeper into Nahri's relationships with Dara and Ali.
Oh, yeah.
And see how all the political craziness in Daevabad impacts their their lives and the decisions they make.
Exactly. And we'll also look at how Nahri tries to rebuild the Nahid Hospital, which is a symbol of her people's healing legacy. But it also gets tangled up with the bigger fight for power and justice in Daevabad.
Stay tuned for part 2. We'll be back to uncover more secrets and dive into the complex relationships that shape Daevabad's destiny. All right, so we're back in Daevabad. Last time, we left Nahri in this hidden city of Djinn, magic, and a whole lot of political drama.
Yeah.
She found out she's a Nahid, a powerful healer, and she's trying to figure out what that means while dealing with this crazy new world.
And it's not just about her personal journey, right? Nahri's return really shakes things up in Daevabad. It throws off the balance of power, especially for King Ghassan. He sees her as a real threat to his authority.
Right, because the Nahids used to be the rulers. So her being there definitely changes things. Plus, she's trying to rebuild the Nahid hospital, which isn't just about healthcare. It's like a symbol of her people's legacy. It's a direct challenge to the people in charge now.
Exactly. And don't forget the other Djinn tribes. They're all watching her, trying to figure out what her moves mean for them. It's like a giant chess game with each tribe making their plays and trying to stay ahead.
So it's not just about Nahri figuring out who she is. It's about how everyone else reacts to her being there. And speaking of reactions, things get even more complicated when we find out that Nahri's married.
Oh, yeah, the marriage. It's totally a political move arranged by King Ghassan to, keep her safe and, let's be honest, keep her under his thumb. Her husband is Muntadhir, the king's younger son. He seems charming, carefree, but there's more to him than meets the eye.
Yeah, I was going to say, he seems kind of, lightweight at first. But as the story goes on, you realize he's playing a much deeper game.
That's what makes him so interesting. His relationships, especially with his Grand Wazir, Kaveh, and Jamshid, a Daiva healer, they show a real loyalty, a willingness to sacrifice for the people he cares about. And remember, in Daevabad, those sacrifices can be super dangerous.
Definitely high stakes. So while Nahri is coming to terms with being a Nahid and all that comes with it, Muntadhir is dealing with his own sense of duty. He's caught between what his family expects and what he really wants.
It's that classic struggle, right? Duty versus desire. And it plays out on a huge scale in Daevabad, with the fate of the city hanging in the balance.
And let's not forget Dara. He's still super protective of Nahri, even though she's married to the prince. That's got to be tough.
Oh, it is. Dara's internal struggle, it gets worse as he watches Nahri live in this new life. Fight with his past, the guilt over what he did during the rebellion, and his feelings for Nahri having gone away, even with the marriage. He's stuck between his loyalty to the Nahids, his own desire for, and the growing influence of Manisha, who's offering a different path of revenge.
And remember, Manisha's not just some random rebel leader. She was Dara's master, and she's got a serious grudge against the Gaziris. Her coming back to Daevabad really changes things, throws everything into chaos.
Totally. While Nahri's trying to find her place in the system, Manisha represents, radical change. Her presence disrupts the little peace there is and forces everyone to pick a side. It's like a wildfire spreading through the city, threatening to burn everything down.
Okay, so we've got this simmering tension between the Devas and the Gaziris, a rebellion led by a Deva who wants revenge, and Nahri stuck in the middle trying to find her own way. Yeah, it could go wrong, right?
Well, let's just say things don't exactly go smoothly. There's this horrible attack on the Shafit, the humans who serve the Djinn. It's just awful, totally brutal, orchestrated by people hiding in the shadows.
Oh, well, who are the Shafit again?
They're humans who were brought to Daevabad generations ago to, serve the Djinn. They're at the bottom, treated poorly, denied basic rights. This attack on them, it's a terrible reminder of how unequal things are in Daevabad.
That's just awful. So this attack, it's not random. It's meant to destabilize the city, create even more conflict, right?
Exactly. And the blame goes straight to the Devas, which makes the tension even worse and pushes Daevabad closer to war. It's that classic tactic, divide and conquer.
And how does Nahri react to all this?
She's horrified, of course. Seeing what happened, the pain and suffering of the Shafit, it forces her to face the limits of her own power. She wants to help, but she's still recovering from being shot with those iron bullets, which really weakened her magic.
Right. Those bullets were made to stop her from using her powers. It shows that even the most powerful healers can be hurt, especially in a place like Daevabad, where magic can be used for good or bad.
Exactly. And this attack, it shows how vulnerable the Shashit are. They become the scapegoats for all the violence. It's heartbreaking to see how prejudice and fear drive people's actions, even in a world with magic.
So where does this leave Nahri, Dara, and Ali?
Well, Nahri, she's driven by her compassion for the Shafit, and she finds herself clashing with the Khatanis more and more, even with Ali. He's trying to be a peacemaker between the fighting groups. His loyalty is tested as he tries to balance his love for Nahri, his hope for peace, and his duty to his family.
It's a tough spot to be in. What about Dara?
Dara's torn. He sees the pain of the Shafit, he understands Menzijay's anger, but he also sees the chance for peace that Nahri represents. He's dealing with his past, his guilt, and the hope for a future without violence. It's a lot.
So everyone's caught in this web of loyalties and desires, and the city's about to fall apart. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Remember Muntadir, Nahri's husband? There's something we find out about him that changes everything. A secret that reveals who he really is and how complicated his relationships are.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of secret?
Let's just say it makes us rethink who we thought he was and what he truly wants. It's a reminder that in Daevabad, things are never what they seem. Everyone's got secrets, and those secrets can shatter the fragile peace that Nahri's trying so hard.
All right, welcome back to Daevabad. Things were pretty intense when we left off, huh? Political schemes, the attack on the Shafit, and that big reveal about Nahri's husband, Muntadir. Get ready, because it's about to get even crazier.
What I find so interesting about this last part is how, our characters' own struggles end up tied to the fate of the whole. Remember all that tension we talked about? Well, it finally explodes, and Daevabad is plunged into pure chaos.
Yeah, and that whole Merid thing we mentioned, it blows up, literally. The lake where those ancient, powerful beings live, it starts flooding the city.
It's like the Merid are a force of nature, a reflection of all the turmoil in Daevabad, centuries of conflict, prejudice, broken promises. It's all come back to bite the Djinn. And the Merid, well, they've got their own grudges against the folks living above the water, and they're not going to just sit back and watch.
So it's not just Djinn fighting each other anymore. Now they've got this whole other, ancient power to deal with. And if I remember right, the Merids aren't exactly known for being forgiving.
Nope, not at all. They're a force that even the most powerful Djinn can't control. It's a reminder that actions have consequences, and those consequences are pretty devastating.
Okay, so we've got a flooded city, vengeful Merid, and Djinn tribes at each other's throats. What happens next?
Well, this is where things get really tough for Dara. Remember how he's been wrestling with his past, his guilt, his feelings for Nahri? All those conflicts come to a head when we find out something shocking. He's been possessed by the Ifrit.
Wait, what? The Ifrit? Those are legendary fire demons, right?
Exactly. They're ancient, incredibly powerful, known for their rage and destruction. And one of them has taken over Dara, twisting his loyalty, turning him into a weapon.
Yeah, that's bad news. Especially for Nahri, right? He was supposed to be protecting her.
It's a huge betrayal, not just for Nahri, but for Dara himself.
Yeah.
Imagine being trapped in your own body, watching as this powerful being uses you to cause pain and destruction. That's what Dara's going through.
Okay, so Dara's possessed by a vengeful Ifrit, the city's under attack by the Merid, and Nahri's healing powers are still messed up from those iron bullets. How does she deal with all this?
Well, the good news is she's not alone. Ali, remember him? He really steps up. He embraces his Merid-influenced powers and uses his control over water to fight back against the Ifrit-possessed Dara. He's trying to protect Daevabad.
So he's finally using his powers to fight for what he believes in. It's like he's connecting the Djinn and the Merid, even though it's in the middle of this crazy battle.
It's a big moment for Ali. He's not just a prince anymore trying to find his place. He's a leader, willing to risk everything to protect the people he cares about and fight for a better future for Daevabad.
But it can't be easy, right? He's going up against pure fire with water magic. And what about Manisha? She's still out there, leading the Deva rebellion, wanting to take over Daevabad for her people.
It's a three-way fight for the soul of the city. Ali, with the power of water against Dara, consumed by Ifrit fire, and Manisha, driven by revenge, pulling strings from the shadow.
And where does Nahri fit into all of this?
She's the key. Remember, she's the last Nahid, descendant of the city's original rulers, and her healing magic, it represents a power that could either unite Daevabad or tear it apart. But she's also dealing with her own doubts and fears. She's seen how destructive magic can be, and she's not sure she wants to unleash her full potential.
So it's not just about having power, it's about how you use it.
Exactly. Nahri's journey makes us ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice for the greater good? How do we stay compassionate and human in the face of all this violence and hatred?
Those are some deep questions.
Yeah.
So how does it all end? Who wins this showdown?
Well, I don't want to spoil the ending, but let's just say Nahri is the one who decides Daevabad's fate. It's her choices, her compassion, and her understanding of both the Djinn and the Merid that lead to a resolution, though it might not be what anyone expects.
That's pretty intriguing. We've covered a lot in this deep dive. The Djinn tribes, their power struggles, the magic, the ancient beings who control the city's fate. But what's the takeaway for our list?
I think Nahri's story shows us that power can be used for good or bad. It can heal, build, unite, but it can also destroy, control, and divide. The choices we make, How we use that power determine what kind of world we create.
So it's not just a story about magic and Djinn. It's about us. It's about the choices we make every day and how they affect the world around us.
Exactly. And it makes us think about our own world, the conflicts we face, and how we can create a better future.
That's a great point. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Knowing what you know now about Nahri, Dara, Ali, and all the complexities of Daevabad, I want you to think about this. If you were in Nahri's shoe, faced with the same challenges, what would you do? What kind of leader what would you be willing to sacrifice for injustice?
That's something to think about for sure. We've come to the end of our Daevabad deep dive, but the story, the questions, the characters, they stick with you. That's the power of a good story, right? It makes you think, it makes you feel, it makes you see the world different. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Now go explore and remember, the toughest choices often lead to the most important outcomes.